Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
And thank you, Mr. Race Hobbs, for that introduction. This is Peter Robbins. The show is Meanwhile Here on Earth, and we are broadcasting from, the center of the universe, really, just outside of Ithaca, New York, on WKUNX Digital Broadcasting. Tonight's show, or this afternoon, or this morning show, when you're listening, ever, is not a standard topic for us here on this program. And it's dedicated to a great musician and a true character with a capital C, named Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy passed on July 22nd, and I took note as a rock and roller, and certainly with my favorite heavy metal bands and my heart and my memories, and was very moved by the extraordinary show of loss, affection, even among people who are not really into this genre. And a good friend and close colleague called me not long after the show, after Ozzy died, to suggest that we do a tribute show. I thought it was a wonderful idea, but I was a bit taken aback because I did not know, I had forgotten that this particular friend had a connection to Ozzy. So who was Ozzy Osbourne? I thought, let's begin in kind of a dispassionate, analytical way and go to Wikipedia. John Michael Ozzy Osbourne, 3 December 1948, 22 July 2025, was an English singer, songwriter, and media personality. He co-founded the pioneering heavy metal band Black Sabbath in 1968 and rose to prominence in the 1970s as their lead vocalist. During this time, he adopted the title of Prince of Darkness. He performed on the band's first 8 studio albums, including Black Sabbath Paranoid, 1970, and Masters of Reality in 71. He was fired before he was fired in 1979 due to his problems with alcohol and drugs. Osbourne began a solo career in the 1980s and formed his band with Randy Rhoads and Bob Daisley, with whom he recorded the album Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman. Throughout the decade, he drew controversy for his antics, both on stage and off, and was accused of promoting Satanism by the Christian right. Overall, Osbourne released 13 solo studio albums, the first 7 of which were certified multi-platinum in the United States. He reunited with Black Sabbath on several occasions. He rejoined from 1997 to 2005 and again in 2012. During the second reunion, he sang on the band's last studio album before they embarked on a farewell tour that ended in 2017. On July 5th, 2025, Osbourne performed his final show at the Back to the Beginning concert in Birmingham, England, having announced that it would be his last due to health issues. Although he intended to continue recording music, he died 17 days later. Osbourne sold more than 100 million albums. The friends and colleagues that I brought together here for panel discussion are as follows. Donald R. Schmitt is the former co-director of the J.Allen Hynek Center for UFO Studies in Chicago, where he served as Director of Special Investigations for 10 years. Prior to that, he was a special investigator for Dr. Hynek, a 7-time best-selling author. His first book, UFO Crash at Roswell, was made into the Golden Globe-nominated movie Roswell. And his book, Witness to Roswell, was the #1 selling UFO book in the world for 2 straight years. Don is also Chief Investigator of the International UFO Museum and Research Center in Roswell, New Mexico. Don Schmitt became friends with Ozzy, working and filming with him in Roswell, and remains friends with Ozzy's son, Jack. Eric Bloom is an American musician, singer, and songwriter, best known as the co-lead vocalist, guitar and keyboard synthesizer player for the legendary heavy metal band, the Blue Oyster Cult. He is the recipient of 5 gold and 2 platinum records, and his work appears on more than 20 of the group's albums, much of his lyrical content relating to his lifelong interest in science fiction. Eric has also maintained a long-time serious interest in the subject of UFOs. For the past 30 years, scientist Matthew Moniz has worked in the fields of analytical chemistry, molecular biology, and genetic engineering in labs in the greater Boston and Cambridge area. In addition to his dedicated laboratory work, Moniz has decades of experience analyzing samples from many famous UFO, crop formation, and paranormal case sites, both here and abroad. He has been co-host and science advisor for the long-running podcast Spooky South Coast for the past 17 years, and is co-host of Inner Space TV with Tom Reed. Moniz has been featured in many programs about UFOs, ghosts, and other areas of the unexplained. He has been a guest on Inside Edition and Ghost Adventurers, and has been featured in dozens of books dealing with the unexplained by such authors as Bud Hopkins, Peter Robbins, Tim Weisberg, and Jeff Belanger. For the past 20 years, he has also worked as a sound engineer and run the AV for many conferences, including all UFO events for the Roswell, New Mexico Convention Center. Soraya Asketh has been studying the unknown for more than 30 years and is currently working on 2 books. The first an autobiography, the other a book about new ways of looking at the various phenomena he has been so involved in chronicling all these years. His studies have spanned the world of the unexplained, UFOs, and lost civilizations, having been a strong focus of his throughout his studies. Perhaps not surprisingly, Soraya is also a lifetime experiencer of strange events. He has been a broadcaster for more than 25 years now, and with his possible paranormal podcast, which has, for me, the best name of any podcast on the paranormal ever, Where Did the Road Go? ? He also hosts a heavy metal-based show called The Last Exit for the Lost. His website is Where Did the Road Go? For the past 8 years, Roger Chaubinard, and you're going to have to correct me on that, my apologies, Roger, has owned a record store called Purchase Street Records in New Bedford, Massachusetts. The store is a majority rock and roll, metal, modern store which mainly concentrates on original releases. Roger's rock and roll heritage comes from his uncle, a drummer named Bobby Schoenbrand, who performed with such artists as Billy Squier and Alice Cooper in many sessions in the 1980s. He performs with a band called All Sinners, which has performed throughout the Northeast and out to Hollywood to play the Whiskey A Go-Go with such bands as L.A. Guns, Faster Pussycat, Stephen Percy, Lita Ford, Dangerous Toys, and Ace Frehley. All Sinners has a record coming out at the end of November. I neglected to mention also that Matthew Moniz is a UFO abductee. And Don, Eric, Soraya, Matt, and Roger, welcome or welcome back to Meanwhile Here on Earth.
Good to be back, Peter.
Always a pleasure.
It's great to see you guys. And being live radio, there's always something that has the potential of going wrong. And right now, Roger he's somewhere in the ozone. In fact, he may be hearing us right now.
He's in a black hole. Yeah.
The main thing is
And his last name is Chouinard.
Schwinnard. Thank you. I wasn't going to get that. No. I'm usually good about asking before time. And hold everything. Hi, Roger. Welcome back.
I must have got abducted or something. I don't know what happened.
Missing time.
Not your fault.
Happens
that-
all the time.
Only me.
That's pronounced Schwinnard.
Correct, yeah.
Thank you. Don, let's begin with you. We've known each other many years. We both know each other as singers. That's something we enjoy doing, part of our childhood and current life.
Certainly,
You
yes.
still sing in the choir of the same church you grew up singing in.
Actually, not the church, but I sing with a professional choral group. But I started as many singers in church. Yes, of course.
I had completely forgotten some years ago when you told me that you were working on this show with Ozzy Osbourne. I just kind of chalked it off because when I think of heavy metal, I just don't think of you. You're not there in the picture at all.
No, I certainly grew up as far as, and during high school, two of the principal, albums that we were listening to at that time were Jethro Tull, Opera Lung, and Black Sabbath. As far as, little did I ever imagine that at some point I'd be receiving a phone call from Jack Osbourne wanting to know if I would meet them down in Roswell.
Yeah.
Well, of all places. And as the story went, that one of the ways that Jack became so interested in the paranormal was that his dad, many a time returning after tour, would bring him UFO books. And a number of them happened to be mine. So when Jack was diagnosed with MS, and there was already talk, because of his condition, that he would start compiling his bucket list. And one of the things that
You meant Ozzy when you said learned about his MS.
Jack, when Jack learned of his, because I was talking about Jack.
Keep going.
Yeah. And one of the things that happened to be on his list was meeting me down in Roswell and going out to the crash site. And little did I know that they had already made the proposal for their TV show where he and his father, and that's what I thought was so wonderful. The idea that that you and your dad would get to travel in a motorhome around the country, seeking out, some of the most unusual, destinations, just to, share that event with your father. But then Jack, being as outspoken as he was, that even in meeting him down in Roswell for the first time, first thing he said to me was, now I'm a 100% doubter. I don't believe any of this. And then he went, convince me.
Oof.
And I made the comment, well, I don't try to convince anyone. I allow everyone to, be their own judge and jury, decide for themselves. But the whole thing leading up to it, and then thereafter, and then just the wonderful experience, and it so much always reminded me of my scientific director, Dr. J.Allen Hynek, always reminding us, don't lose that little boy wonderment. And that was Ozzy Osbourne personified. That he never, lost that part of him, that level of curiosity, that level of just always experiencing not only new things, but the strange, the bizarre. And then trusting his son enough that he allowed Jack to take him by the hand and go into some of the strangest situations. And they would experience them together. And I loved it. I loved it. I'm sure we'll be going into in greater detail, but just as an intro, that it was another side of him that I had never seen before, but I came away with just a total respect. That here was someone who never lost track of his, childhood.
Eric, you are the only one of us that met Ozzy, and that was really at the beginning of his and your career as well. Did you have occasion to meet him later in both of your careers?
I met Ozzy in the early 70s. We were both staying at the Plaza Hotel in Copenhagen. And the Black Sabbath was playing down the street, and we were playing at a different venue. And there's a photograph on my Facebook page that I dredged up and reposted. Oh, there it is. I guess you found it. I'm guessing, the guy in the middle is the head of our fan club.
Ozzy looks 12 years old. I'm sorry.
He's younger than me.
It's a great picture.
So I guess I'm around 25 there in that picture. So Ozzy must have been about 23 or something like that. So they were already, they did well right from the beginning. Their records took off fast, and we also were on our way up, but we were not really a big band at that time. But he was sitting in the bar, hard to believe. And so I was down at the bar, and a guy from the fan club said, "Why don't you go over and say hi to Ozzy?" So I did, and we sat there and hoisted a few beverages. And everybody was in their cups and had a great time. And we wound up playing several shows with Ozzy, with Black Sabbath. Back then in the 70s, we were their support act for several shows. They were, definitely a bigger band. And then as we rose up, years later, as you told in the preface, Ozzy left the band, and we did a tour when Ronnie Dio became the lead singer, called the Black and Blue Tour, where we toured with Black Sabbath, but that was not with Ozzy. So I don't want to get off the subject.
I just love the name of the tour, though.
Yeah, it was Black and Blue.
That's wonderful.
It made sense. And but we did play again with Ozzy as a solo act with the fabulous Bill Graham as the promoter.
Oh boy,
who had he's probably the best rock promoter that ever lived. And we did he had big shows called Day on the Green, which he played out of Oakland and San Francisco. And we did play with Ozzy again as a solo act. And those were great. And Ozzy was on one of those shows. And I did not personally cross paths with Ozzy again to be able to say hi.
Yeah.
But Rudy Sozo, who's a really good friend of mine, was the bass player in that Ozzy solo act.
Eric, a brief follow-up question, which is, in the world of performers, all kinds of artists, you deal with some huge egos and very colorful personalities, especially if it's a level, if it's an area of performing that in general calls for excess. What was it about Ozzy, observing as a professional, that made him...
When I met him, he was very down to earth.
Yeah.
But we were both very young guys, and there was no airs put on at all. It was like, let's have a drink, and that was it.
Soraya, you have a great knowledge of heavy metal music. You do a weekly show on it. You've worked with so many bands over the years. Can I ask you, when you were up and coming and were younger and had hair just as long, and another black T-shirt, were you a specifically a Black Sabbath fan, or just another band that you liked?
So I didn't get into metal until around 83 or 84. So the first Black Sabbath I heard was Trashed with Ian Gillan, which I loved. That's around the same time, Ozzy was putting out Bark at the Moon. So that was the first Ozzy I heard, was the Bark at the Moon stuff, and then Speak of the Devil, which I loved. And then, I honestly, the Dio Black Sabbath stuff has always been my favorite. But, I went back, I had to go back to listen to that and also to listen to Ozzy stuff, which, I mean, obviously, they're one of the most influential bands in music. I mean, they pretty much started heavy metal. I mean, someone else would have come across that type of sound sooner or later. There were other bands doing some stuff, but Sabbath just had all the right pieces, the right name, the right personalities to just kind of hit a home run with it. And Ozzy, when he went on his own, I honestly prefer Ozzy's solo stuff over Black Sabbath stuff. So yeah, I really loved Ozzy for many years. I mean, there's a point in his solo career where I started losing interest, but I saw him live numerous times. As much as Blizzard and Oz and Diary are great, there's some later records that are really freaking good too. So he was just, I mean, I think he had an overall influence across the board on heavy metal musicians and probably other musicians as well. And he had just such a big personality.
Roger, your thoughts, going back to when you first heard Black Sabbath or were first aware of him as a performer? Can you turn up your volume?
Or unmute.
Oh, it's muted. Yeah. Okay, great.
Okay. No problem. I was a lot like how he just, I'm 53, 54 now. So like I learned of Ozzy first in my neighborhood, which Matt lived, we grew up together. And the Ozzy solo stuff was some of the first stuff that I did hear, Bark at the Moon and, Diary of a Madman stuff. And then going back, there wasn't a lot of, news outlets. There wasn't, obviously internet and everything else to find the back history on somebody. You had to learn it from your older friends that your parents didn't want you hanging around with. So, and that's what we went off. I love the Ultimate Sin and everything. And a lot of people forget that Black Sabbath wasn't about a singer. Black Sabbath was about three other guys in the band too that continually kept on making great songs. So
thank you for that. In the world of rock and roll show business, shocking adults is part of what it's all about. Going back to the origin and remembering that famous broadcast on Ed Sullivan of Elvis Presley, where they had to debate whether or not to show the cameras of him moving his hips, because that reminds people of SEX, and we can't have that around for the children. One of the things about Black Sabbath was this pose of being somehow associated with Satanism or devil worship. Of course, some folks that really had no contact with heavy metal and did not understand that this really wasn't about Satanism or devil worship. It was about having a good time and pushing the envelope a bit. Any of you have at any time any sense that this was authentic, that there was something to the Satanist aspect as opposed to being pure theater? Matt?
Well, okay. No, I knew it was theater from the get-go because, as you know, there's a satanic cult that has caused murders in the local area. And one of the things was pointed out that true Satanism stays hidden. Okay, they're not out in front of you. They're cloak and dagger behind closed doors.
Yeah.
So, but he put on great theater. And of course, people, that are used to having that simple mind, oh, he's got to be the devil. Well, that made all the more fodder for him to, run up against, hey, come see my show if I'm so evil, right? The only evil that would be associated with the shows that he put on would be the money. And that's evil in anything that happens these days.
Eric, I mean, the Blue Oyster Cult has taken different poses over the decades, and what a wonderful catalog of music it is. For me, it's all very personal, and I think even at the band's most aggressive in terms of lyrics or intensity of music, it was theater. It is theater. It's a wonderful show to accompany the music that you guys have written over the years and the other great people that you've worked with. Was at any point, did you feel that you've ever come up against a band or a personality in the world of rock and roll who actually is a Satanist or a devil worshiper and not just taking that pose to, get some traction?
No.
Okay.
Sorry to give you a short answer.
That's fine.
It says the same as what Matt said. It's all showbiz.
Yeah.
And we had our share of governmental purity and let's stop all this rock and roll craziness. But I think Dee Snider did a good job of debunking a lot of that. He went to Washington and said, let's have some free speech here. And I give him a lot of credit for that. Yeah. And we had our share of we were called all kinds of names by I don't want to get into a current political stuff because there's all kinds of people paying attention to this right now. But there's some people that want to see things a certain way, and they don't agree with you if you say things in a song. So
yeah,
let them just turn it off.
Soraya, you have worked with, listened to, and studied so many bands that fall into this general category. Some of them in part because bands like Black Sabbath took this pose, and I think sometimes younger people, there's a disconnect there, especially if drugs are being used or you're half drunk. But have you ever come up against any band or performers who actually do see the dark side as where they live, as opposed to it's a pose, it's just another way to get a rise out of folks or disturb adults?
Well, first I want to clarify, devil worshippers by default are Christian, because that's the Christian theology of Satan and the devil. So a Satanist doesn't believe as Satan as an entity. It's more of a philosophy. And yes, I've met many people who have a satanic philosophy to their stuff. I've never met anyone who worships the devil. I mean, look at the best example would be a band like Behemoth. They have a very satanic overview. They're very genuine about it. It's very Luciferian. And there are a bunch, especially black metal bands that are like that. Back in the 90s on The Last Exit, we started doing, I had not a co-host, but someone else that worked at the station that made the comment that everyone who listens to metal loves Satan. And I said, that's right. We all love Satan. And I went, oh, that would be a fun theme show. Like take the cheesy satanic bands like Venom and stuff like that, and just make a show out of it. And I've done it now for years because people love it. And the last one I did, I tried to do a one band per year going back in time. And so they had to reference Satan or have it in their name, like Satan's host or Lucifer's friend or whatever, and go back 1 year. And I got back to Arthur Brown, which I think was 68. The Hellfire song.
Yeah.
A lovely man, by the
Black
way.
Huh?
And a great musician.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Black Sabbath, if you look at the lyrics, read the lyrics to After Forever. That's about going to heaven.
Interesting.
Like I'm thinking, well, there's got to be some Black Sabbath stuff. And sure, if you look at like Born Again, you got Disturbing the Priest and stuff like that. But there's not really a lot of satanic stuff. I mean, the Dio stuff wasn't satanic. You could argue Heaven and Hell was, but it wasn't really a pro-Satan type of song. When you look at a lot of Sabbathist lyrics, they're more Christian than anything else. It's just the aura they had of them.
So interesting.
And even the name Black Sabbath comes from the movie. It wasn't. So I don't think. And Ozzy, always said he was a Christian, and I think he was born again Christian in the late 80s too.
Yeah.
So I think that's just something that got tagged onto them. And whereas, yes, nowadays there are plenty of bands like that. Like I said, especially in the black metal scene. But yeah, not Sabbath or Ozzy.
Roger, you have an opportunity to see this from a different angle than we do, as among other things in your life, you own a record store. And you go back to being like we all were when we were young record buyers. It's great to see record stores making a resurgence again. I think we all have that memory of flipping through albums, and each one is a 12-inch by 12-inch opportunity to take your attention. Is one of the things that being close to the Blue Oyster Cult over the years that I admired, the different covers, their power, their ability to stop you for a moment. And AC/DC, Black Sabbath, AC/DC as well, had some great covers. But comparing when you were young, Roger, were you actually out there buying Black Sabbath albums? And whether you were or weren't, you have some sense of fans because they come in and buy records from you.
Oh yeah, I sell this stuff all the time. My first records was "Speak of the Devil." My parents got me that for Christmas. Ace Frehley solo record, but it all stems. You want to find the family tree of a certain artist, especially. At least I do, and a lot of people do. They're a completist. People that do buy records, vinyl, CDs, tapes, and they want everything from start to finish.
Got it.
So,
yeah.
It keeps business 100%. I even have a Blue Oyster Cult section at my store, and
yes.
And they want the Japanese edition, right, etc.
I'll send you a picture of it. I'll email you a picture of it.
Don?
I think what clearly to me demonstrated the contrast into his stage persona, the dark side, was how he was in person. And when he and Jack were driving down from Albuquerque down to Roswell in their motorhome, and they had a camera on the two of them, and they had a camera on me at the museum in Roswell. So I'm supposed to be chatting with Jack, and all at once I hear in the background, do 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 do, from Ozzy, and I say to Jack, tell your dad to knock it off. And I'm going, oh my God, I just told Ozzy Osbourne to shut up. So an hour later, when they arrived, and he stood there and he looks at me and he goes, Don Schmitt, And I'm thinking he's going to chew me out. And he opens up his arms and he gives me the biggest hug. And the first thing that impressed me was his beautiful hair. I mean, it was as gorgeous as far as it would have been gorgeous for a woman. But for the next 4 days when we were shooting, and he was sitting in the motorhome at one point, and he had his headphones on, and he was kind of bopping along. And I walked past, and I tapped on the glass, and he rolled it down. I said, "Yeah, who are you listening to?" And he goes, "Wings." Paul McCartney. So, I mean, again, he was not full of himself at all. He didn't take himself seriously. That's what I picked up, and it wasn't. It was no different than when word had leaked out that he was in town, and all at once the museum was just surrounded by hundreds of people. And not only did we need to sneak he and Jack in, but then we had to sneak them out.
Good luck.
And we did. It worked. But he was having fun with it. It wasn't like he, what did I get myself into? And you people are responsible. And if anybody gets hurt, I'm not assuming any, blame, that type of thing. He, had this impish look on his face like this was another side of him that was coming up for air. And he was relishing it.
This picture tells part of a story here.
With Elton, yeah.
But that Ozzy had a great sense of humor. Mm-hmm. And that, like a lot of us, you really enjoy making people laugh. I love this shot. I saw another photo, I guess taken a few seconds later. I lost it. But at that point, Prince Charles, now King Charles, had totally lost it and was really cracking up. And I thought, what a spectacular moment, for a working class kid to come to the point where you're making the future King of England laugh. There's something very special about that. And what you get from some of these photos, Elizabeth Taylor and Elton John, friendship between performers in very different genres is usually based on seeing the real person and enjoying their company. When the announcement came that Ozzy died, I was on computer as usual, and all of a sudden seeing one announcement after another, one meme thrown together after another, people expressing their sadness, their shock, and spontaneous memorials happening in different places as this, reconnection with this very simple, rather ancient way of acknowledging someone's passing. And again, it caught me off guard that this particular performer, who I always enjoyed, but I didn't realize how many other people in the world felt the same way I did. This image actually made me incredibly sad. It's an honor to, enter the world of pop culture. Eric, I remember when you guys were characters on The Simpsons. It's a quirky honor, but it's very real. And that sadness is reflective of the affection, even love, that we have for performers who move us, who make us laugh, who make us feel. And I'm wondering, again, how you see this phenomena as either fans or professionals, in that really it's simple enough to know that a well-known personality has passed and they're acknowledged and you go on. It's another thing when it brings people closer together and you realize that the world has lost somebody rather special. Matt, your thought on when you either heard that he had passed or just looking at it now, as I'm yammering away here, as a point of reflection on the heritage, what we've lost here, what we've gained.
All right. My view is, I didn't coin the phrase, I'm borrowing it. We have in our lives what we call milestone men, people that have made their milestone in the world and society. And when people like these milestone men die, a little bit of us dies with them, because they were what helped build us. They were there for us as we were going through life. We knew that this was this fixed point. This person was this icon, and we all know him and all recognize him as that milestone in our life, that they introduced us or brought us further into the works of other people. Like Roger was saying earlier, he got introduced to him and then started seeing other people. Same thing for me. Dio and Ozzy were the very first concerts I saw. So for me, that was a formidable part of my life, and I've seen, all kinds of bands, and I've been involved with, bands, but that impetus got me into it, is what I'm saying. So this person shared a milestone in all of our lives in one way or another, and now they're gone, and we all feel it.
Yeah. For me, having fun at your own expense is the highest form of humor. We see it with everybody from Chaplin to more modern comics. It's easy to take somebody else down, but this completely cracked me up. Well, no, not that one.
Okay.
That's not funny. That's great. Who would you pick to play you in a movie about your life? Denzel Washington. And why not?
I think one of the reasons that I think everybody felt moved by the Ozzy's loss is I think, but besides his talent, which was enormous, but I think Ozzy, when you saw him, either in a concert or from his, the Osbournes, or any way you saw him,
Sure.
I think you felt uplifted by him, and I think you feel that loss. You're not going to be uplifted anymore.
You really put those words together perfectly, Eric. Also, the fact that he never shied away or refused to own the fact that he had problems, some that he dealt with, some that he didn't deal with as effectively. He never tried to escape the regulation issue category of being a flawed human being. And one of the great things about the long-running television show, I think, was that they didn't flinch from it. They didn't spin it into a theatrical, aspect. It was just a real part of his life and show. The other thing is, certain people, they've got a certain look. And in the world of performing, of course, a striking presentation, the luck of the DNA is great. But Ozzy he's a great looking guy, a lot of character in his face, and a wonderful sense of how to theatricalize, how to become the character that you're playing on stage, the person that the fans want to see, and the ones that they can, relate to.
And
or have fun.
One thing a lot of people don't talk about, Ozzy was a good singer.
Thank you. That's very important if you're a lead singer.
Yeah, but I mean, some guys, he was hitting notes, that a lot of people don't hit, and he sang in tune.
Yeah, before the advent of auto-tune. Yeah, when you actually had to sing.
Yeah.
A very good point. And without naming any names, I think all of us can come up with some frontman or well-known vocalist who is not quite up there with other ones who, move us quite as much. This photo I thought was very poignant. And as, he grew more infirm, he didn't try to hide it. He didn't take advantage of it or look for sympathy. He just let it show. And I think that also is a mark of character. I can only imagine for certain performers, your face, your voice, your moves are your life and your fortune. And all of a sudden something is going. And you see yourself in terms of all these aspects. How are you going to be if, you've lost your voice, or you can't jump around on stage anymore, or you forget a lyric here and there? I think a lot of us forget what incredibly hard work being a performer is. And again, as we were talking about earlier, when I mentioned to Eric that idea that every time you get out on stage and you start that first song in the set of the next show that you're doing, the audience, they're on your side, they're fans, they, to various degrees, admire, love, respect you, what they want to hear. And that is you singing the song you're singing exactly the way they remember it from the record. And anything less may disappoint them. How do you deal with that, Eric? You've been in that situation more times than anybody can count, getting out there, that first song, that, and get that audience up and their enthusiasm running. It all is on you. And what happens if you've had a terrible day? You still got to get out there and make it real for your audience.
Well, I'm not 25 anymore. So I have to do the best I can, and that's the best answer I can give you. Unfortunately, social media will grab a video from some unfortunate people out there that maybe are not up to it. And I'm not going to mention any names. And, and sometimes they might grab a video of me not at my best and plaster it up there. He ain't what he used to be. And that happens, forgetting a word or didn't get enough sleep last night or whatever. And there's very few people who can be at my age what they were when they were 25. But
yes.
Some people can still do it and some people can't. But what can I say? We're still trying, and we're still having a good time.
I think Mick Jagger continues to amaze all of us on a certain level.
He's a very unusual man. He's amazing.
He seems to keep in tremendous shape. And I thought I had one image here I wanted to share. It has absolutely nothing to do with our conversation, except that it's funny. And I think the spirit of it, and I think I might have knocked it out. Oh, well, I'm off on a wrong tangent here. Looking at some more period photos here, it's really at the beginning, well, relatively. This is early 70s.
By the way, if we're a little off the Ozzy subject, there's a man standing behind Ozzy. Put that picture back up. Tommy Iommi is the secret weapon. Tommy Iommi. I mean, all those songs have the greatest hooks in the world. And he wrote them.
I'll be damned. Yeah. A doubly great shot in that case.
Great young man there.
Yeah. Looking good and having a great time. 1982. A different look for Ozzy. And also 1982.
Yeah, he's in his solo career there.
Damn, that looks like it's going to be an awesome piece. Again, humor for one person is not humor for the next. I happen to have a particularly dark sense of humor, although I respond to more wholesome humor as well. But when I saw this photo, it cracked me up, and I thought, oh boy, there's somebody out there that is irritated as hell watching this. That's Jack at 2 weeks old. I mean, can you feel the love? I think it's just wonderful. And I don't have to tell you who that woman is. Some of the photos of Ozzy and family, especially with the kids, you know, they're just wonderful. Whatever you do for a living, you know, love is at the center of your life. My favorite of the kid shots, this is with one of his granddaughters.
Yeah.
A very sweet one with his granddaughter Pearl. You know, Don, I was thinking.
Quickly, let me just mention. They had to cut the shoot by a day because Jack's daughter had taken ill back in L.A.
Oh.
And how frantic it got to the point for both Jack and Ozzy that they would get back to Albuquerque to catch a plane. So again, family clearly that I witnessed came first.
Yeah.
That it didn't matter as far as what the business was, that family still was number one.
You know, something, Eric.
You walked away with just admiration and respect. It wasn't like, well, you're costing us a day of shooting. No. You know, get back to LA and we wish you well.
Yeah. Something Eric said made me want to think out loud to you on this question, Don. I've seen Eric perform quite a number of times over the past 50 odd years, and he always makes it real. I mean,
absolutely
hard work, but you've got to make it look less than hard work. You and I, Don, we perform by a certain definition. We get up in front of crowds and we give presentations. Long, short, heavily illustrated, ones that we cover the material we know very well in a professional manner, others where you get caught up in a certain amount of that emotion that comes up every time that you address a subject that you're passionate about. Children of Roswell, and the content of that book, for good example. However, you know, if we're up there and we're working, you know, giving our talk, we don't have the same risk that we would have if we were holding on to a microphone, singing our heart out with a band behind us,
right?
Having to keep a certain sensibility, a certain visual sense. You're looking at your audience. You know, if we need a course correction, it's simpler, and you know the boat turns a little slower, but it's not the immediacy of this kind of performing.
Though it is a one-person performance in that regard.
That's true.
And I know a juxtaposition of like when we have performed like with the symphony, and like we're doing a tribute to Mozart, and the slightest glitch the audience is not going to perceive. A lot of it, you know, just streams together, and it isn't where if you or I in putting on a lecture, if we mispronounce something or we just say we mispronounce the wrong, you know, just a word, that's what people come away with. But certainly Eric knows this better than we do. The idea that, and Ozzy would certainly, you know, be the best example of all. You draw your energy from the crowd.
Yeah.
I mean, when they're into as far as the performance, there's nothing wrong you can do.
Yeah.
You are just, it's the ultimate high in that you see the expressions and you look at the eyes of the audience And it is just an experience that until you've had that, people don't realize just how privileged we are to even have that experience.
It's true. And that is a great note to end this first hour on. And we are, in fact, through the first hour. Peter Robbins here with my extraordinary team of guests discussing the late, great Ozzy Osbourne on Meanwhile Here on Earth. See you in 4 minutes.
The UNX Network presents a health and wellness spiritually based brand of hemp-derived CBD products made by Hopewell Farm in Harrogate, Tennessee. We apply our Cathara energy work with all of our plants and products. Our products made in small batches with only 2 ingredients of pure hemp, full-spectrum crude oil, and coconut-derived MCT oil. Third-party lab tested for potency and legal THC levels with 6 strengths of 1 ounce oil to choose from. Know what you're buying and get what you pay for from Hopewell Farm. Applied directly to a specific area, Hopewell Farm topical salve in 1 ounce and ½ ounce sizes made with pure hemp crude oil, comfrey extract, and all natural ingredients. Find the Hopewell Farm link and coupon code on the UNX Network website at unxnetwork.com. That's unxnetwork.com.
If you want something fun to do with the family this summer, listen up. It's the ultimate celebration of the iconic sci-fi universes that have captured people's imaginations for generations. And it's taking place in Bonne Terre, Missouri. Special guests include a NASA astronaut, Disney artist, YouTube content creator, and characters from the Star Wars universe, also robots and world-class model builders. The Space Museum and Grissom Center in Bonne Terre presents its latest installment of Show Me Space 2025 with Show Me Sci-Fi Space on Saturday, June 28 from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The Space Museum and Grissom Center is located at 118 East School Street in Bonne Terre. Call 573-358-1200 or visit space-mo.org. That's space-mo.org.
The new book, How to Research a Haunted House by paranormal investigator Margie Kay and professional researcher Violet Wisdom, is now available from UNX Media. This one-of-a-kind book explains how to do research on a house with uncommon methods and resources used by historic home researchers, and how to determine who may be doing the haunting and why. How to Research a Haunted House can be used by homeowners, renters, investors, and it should be in the library of all professional paranormal investigators. Get this unique book at unxmedia.com or amazon.com. That's unxmedia.com or amazon.com.
And welcome back to the second hour of Meanwhile Here on Earth with me, your host, Peter Robbins. My guests today are Don Schmitt, Eric Bloom, Matthew Moniz, Soraya Azketh, and Roger Chouinard. And we are talking about Ozzy Osbourne. A Facebook friend of mine, learning about this show, sent me a note. A number of them did, and most of them were really had this same feeling. My friend is Elizabeth Lopilato. Regarding Ozzy, I grieved Ozzy's death like he was my close friend. He was a part of my life, a large part of my teenage years. All of the artists that have died over the past few years, Eddie Van Halen, Tom Petty, David Bowie. I had the posters all over my bedroom walls. In a way, they were people I saw every day. Because of Ozzy's son Jack and my love for the paranormal, I loved to watch Jack Osbourne's Night of Terror and adored Sharon and Ozzy being a part of it. For me, they made the show. Again, this feeling of personal loss that is certainly not the rule. And it's not limited, of course, to the world of performers. We see it with people in public positions irregularly. Do you think that Ozzy's legacy will be purely about music, remembering your youth, having a good time, getting in the face of the system, or something more? He really touched so many people in such a personal way that will we remember Ozzy the man more than Ozzy the musician? Again, an imperfect question, but I'm going to stick you with it, Soraya, first. You're muted.
I'm not.
Peter, before you continue, something has come up, and I have to bow out.
Eric Bloom, a pleasure having you here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be here for the first hour. Everybody, nice to see you
We'll
all.
be in touch.
Bye.
Thanks again.
Good met you, Eric.
Am I still muted?
Yeah. Okay. And Grace, you know you are welcome to join us at any time as not just a producer, but indeed as a guest as well. I know when I think of Ozzy, or when I will think of him in future, it will be with a smile and, a foot tapping. Soraya?
Am I still muted? Am I good?
No, you are loud and clear.
I didn't do anything, so that wasn't on my end. At first, I wanted to mention that, Ozzy was not only a good singer, but what always amused me is that you could clearly understand his lyrics. And then you listen to him talk in real life, and you can barely make out what he was talking about. I'm like, how does this man sing with such enunciation and clarity?
But see, that's like a Mel Tillis, the country singer, who stutters, and yet when they sing, you'd never know that they had a speech impediment, right?
Of course, especially for us Americans, some of the regional accents all over the United Kingdom can be killer. In last autumn, I was back in Yorkshire, and it will take me a certain amount of time for my ears and brain to readjust to these accents. In fact, I remember way back when I was working on Left at East Gate, I took part in a documentary, I guess it was in early-ish 90s, and they interviewed a local farmer in Suffolk who had observed activity that locked into a scenario of other people seeing. He was speaking English, of course, but they needed English subtitles, which was hysterical and all the more entertaining. But yes, it's just part of the quirkiness. I think when you sing, though, you enunciate. Well, unless it's part of your style that you're going to, smooth out the end of words or lyrics or something. But
or you're James Brown.
Yeah, it's like having good handwriting. It's clear communication. People used to joke about method acting, that it was about mumbling. No, but sometimes it would appear that way. But yes, diction is important.
Well, you know,
I,
people will always complain that you can't understand metal lyrics, and I mean, yeah, when you get to death metal, I mean, John Tardy, when he started Obituary, basically said he never wrote lyrics; he just made sounds. Um, Ozzy, you know, like was crystal clear. And what was your initial question? Like, was it about his?
well, how he'll be remembered most as a great musician, a
I think more
colorful
than that.
personality.
Don't
Um,
mutter, Steve. Don't mutter. Don't mutter, Peter. Don't mutter. Yeah.
I think Ozzy
I think sometimes it's all together. But
will be remembered as a musical icon, and but more than that, because he had the reality show and people got to see him in everyday life, and he
yeah,
was such a big persona.
yeah.
Like the music was just a part of who he was, and I think he was a very unique person. And if you look at, I mean, first of all, the timing of his death, you're not going to get much more perfect than that. You know, he did his final show with this big
Right.
extravaganza, and he passes away afterwards. I mean, that was like, when you have a life that well lived, that's not, to me, that's not sad.
Yes.
You know, he got to put that ending on it, and then peacefully move on. And my timeline, of course, being into music, was just filled. Everything was Ozzy. A few days later, Hulk Hogan dies, and being a big wrestling fan, my timeline was not filled with stuff about Hulk Hogan. It
Interesting.
happened here and there, but this is the difference. I mean, Hulk Hogan was arguably bigger than Ozzy ever was, but he also wasn't a very good person.
That's right.
And so, yeah, some people were like, "Oh, you know, I'm sad Hogan's dead." Other people were like, "Well, he was inspirational to me, but I know he was a POS." You know, didn't hear bad stuff coming out about Ozzy. Everyone had something positive to share about Ozzy.
The way that you said that, I hadn't thought of it quite like that. The timing of his passing and the grace that he did it with. The final show, by the way, and I had started to show the meme and then pulled out of it, but good Lord, what an amazing way to leave this earth. Most people, you know, you just don't get to do that. Talk about leaving the planet a little better than you found it.
Yeah.
And to pre-think that this, you know, I'm going to die, but we're going to make this money on this concert. And I'm proud of that as part of my sign-off. It's, again, the Denzel remark completely caught me off guard and cracked me up. I also, for years, used a meme. I have like most of us, a little collection of them. Mine's not little at all, actually. It's, but one for happy birthday to people. And I'm not sure whether to retire this one yet or just put it in extra service.
Nice.
Now, perhaps one of you knows the true story of the story that got him his first worldwide media coverage of biting a head off of a living flying creature. My best understanding is that that didn't actually happen, but I know people who believe it does. Anybody here have the dope on that?
So his explanation of it did actually happen. He said that people were throwing stuffed bats at him, and he reached out to grab one and bit the head off of it, and it turned out not to be a stuffed bat.
Oh, wow.
Now, I
Like
don't,
it.
being honest, I mean, he was a pretty wild guy and on lots of, you know, drinking a lot and everything else. So maybe he knew it was a real bat and just said, "What the hell?" But that's his official story on that.
Okay, well, that will live long in his legend then. That is something I have yet to do.
Good.
Don, I think this possibly hasn't. Couldn't help it. I don't even need to finish the sentence.
All I know is he also, you know, we and it was discussed earlier. I mean, his sense of humor and that his wit, even in your effort in trying to understand what he was saying. But he would be so fast with a quip that if you'd say something, and I remember at one point we were at the old military base south of Roswell, and it's presently an aerospace company, and they snuck us into the building because they wanted us to bypass all the engineers and all the staff and all the offices.
Sure.
And they knew we were coming in, and so it was almost like a receiving line as we walked in through the side door. And again, he handled it masterfully. It wasn't like, that like when I've worked with Bill Shatner in the past, and a lot of times where his hands are always up, like, just keep away, don't, just stay away from me, that type of thing. Ozzy was not that way at all. I mean, he was shaking hands and posing for pictures. And I remember at one point, I said something to him, and the next thing I know, he's laughing so hard that he's got his head resting on my shoulder, and we're both shaking because he's laughing that hard.
It's a great feeling.
And then he steps back and he looks me square in the eye, and he goes, "I beat you to the punch because I was only saying what I thought you would say in response to that question." And I love it. So his mind, it was intact. It had slowed down, but nonetheless, I mean, it was still sharp. It was still there, and the wit was still 100%.
Matt and Soraya and Roger, were you aware that Ozzy had a long-time interest in UFOs and the paranormal, Matt?
It's not.
I was aware.
Yeah. Soraya?
Yeah, I was not.
Interesting. And Roger?
No, I didn't have a clue.
Yeah. Do we know, Don, where his original interest came from? And to preface that, I will say, and if Eric was here, he would certainly back it up, so many musicians who are fortunate enough to have careers that have them performing regularly spend inordinate times on the road. And as a result, are pretty avid readers and extra time to consume books. I know that for Eric, who has been a science fiction fan since he was a kid, extremely well read and became involved in UFOs after the fact. But I'm wondering how many. I think it's probably a higher ratio than a random population demographic sample. How many well-known and not as well-known people in pop music, UFOs, rock and roll, and other kinds of performers really have a profound interest in UFOs even before it was acceptable?
Well, I believe the best current example would be Tom DeLonge, and even the late David Bowie had a UFO experience. I think many of them, just being within that genre, that they are more eccentric, they are more into the esoteric, and as a result, UFOs would automatically fall into that category. But my impression was that originally it was Jack that was so captivated. That's why I had described that he had always requested that his dad would bring him UFO books. And I remember when Jack was first telling him about myself, and Ozzy made the comment of his ignorance, and then Jack added, well, he's written one of what's considered one of the Bibles within the UFO field, and that being our book Witness to Roswell.
Yeah.
And then Jack joked, or excuse me, Ozzy joked, well, how do I know he's not a serial killer? So,
That's the first time that you've ever been asked that question. I'm going to bet money on that.
Yeah. And then it came from Ozzy Osbourne.
That's actually a point of great pride. That should loom large in your legend. Damn, I wish he had said that about me. And in that spirit, I'm not the devil people make me out to be. I've always been the guy who wants to make people laugh, headbang, and forget their problems at least for a while. You know what? That says it all.
There's something else I wanted to bring up here, and that's a perfect thing to do so with. When he was cited as being the reason the kid killed himself in the 80s because of the song Suicide Solution.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was people literally devilizing him. And what really bothered me is that the song is an anti-drinking song. It's about the dangers of alcohol.
Yeah,
that's right.
Anyone with half a brain can take 2 seconds, look at that, and be like, yeah, this is not about killing yourself. This is about the dangers of suicide. Yet this went all the way to courts. And it's like, are these people intentionally just not reading the lyrics? Are they reading the lyrics and don't care? Is it just if they figure he's a convenient scapegoat, people won't actually look into it? Like he was vilified for things like that repeatedly. And of course, the idea that he was some kind of devil worshiper and all this other stuff, but nothing in his music really suggested that.
It's theater on a certain level.
Very much so. But even no pro-Satan songs, like that's not what he was singing about. He attacked what was it, Swaggart on the one song?
Yes.
Yes. Well, rightfully so, as it turns out.
Oh, yeah.
It's other people looking for their 15 minutes of fame off of basically him.
Yeah.
They're trying to get their fame and stuff because of his stature. So the spotlight, shines on them for their own stupidity.
That point that you made, Soraya, about, a suicide solution, for example. I'm a concerned parent. My kid bought this album. Oh my God, there's a song called this. I don't even have to listen to the song or read the lyrics. This is the title. This is bad for kids. I don't like Black Sabbath or Ozzy Osbourne. And the closest I've ever come to kind of having that transition was in the, almost 50 years ago, as punk music was starting up here, almost 50 years ago. My sister became very interested in it, involved in it, listened to it. And that moment where you first catch yourself saying, oh my God, what I just thought to myself or said, I sound just like my parents telling me something 30 years ago. Is, you call that music? I'm into rock and roll. I remember the real thing. I like heavy metal. This punk stuff is crap. She said, come to this club with me and hear some of these bands. And the club was a horrible little hole in the wall that I became a regular at, called CBGB's. The band that was playing there that day were new friends of hers, boys from Queens, named the Ramones. And the next week we went and we saw the Talking Heads. And the next week we went and we saw Patti Smith, etc. Many of the bands, the lesser known ones, the whole ambiance was about, we are here to slash, burn, hate. And in reality, watching the shows, they were extremely clever. They were like vaudeville. They were highly theatricalized and acted out, and the audience had a great time with it. A band like Blondie, which started there, and they were such a good band, but Helen opened for them twice. And what can you say? They became part of my world of music, but that key was not taking the genre seriously. I mean, taking it seriously, these are musicians, they were working hard, but not the angst and the bravada and the fabulous soap opera aspects of it, which my sister was very good at as a performer. I think, it's what every generation in a way wants, to be entertained in maybe a way that they can claim is just a little bit more theirs than, the previous generation. And having a good time on your own terms is hopefully a lot of what informs certainly our younger years. We want to look back on having had a good time if possible. And, as we move on, especially in more serious times, there's a great proverb, I think it's Sicilian, which is living well is the best revenge. And whatever the hell's going on in the world, be good to yourself and have a good time and be good to the people you're with. We actually have another almost 40 minutes. And I want to know if any of you four guys have a direction that you would like to take this conversation in. Mr. Moniz,
Yes.
you may leave the room. Oh, no, yes, you're acknowledged.
Well, I would actually like to tap Roger on this, since he already is a record store owner, and you're talking about albums that are parental advisory. Is that still in force today? And the other thing about that is I feel that a parental advisory on music is the equivalent to basically banning a book or something visual.
Or like the old, the Hayes Commission in film that started to seriously censor in 1933. Yeah. Roger, will you address that for us?
It's funny because I make a joke like if a younger person brings up a record, and obviously with their parent or whatever, and I wouldn't let a 10-year-old buy like a hip hop record, like an NWA record. No, but that's all I need in the newspaper. But I do make the joke, hey, you old enough, this and that and everything else. But a lot of the people are well aware of what they buy. And honestly, let's face it, the internet's out there. You can learn anything you want by just turning on your phone. So whatever's on a record, they're not going to learn anything new, I feel. But for the majority, people know what they're buying. They've already heard it on the internet. They've done their research and everything like that. But I do kind of clue them in, if a parent buys something that they're not really aware of, and I go, what they're buying, right? I try to be responsible, and everything else. But what's fun is when a parent comes in and they're so proud that their son is buying Ozzy record or a Motley Crue record.
Yeah.
That parent
inheriting the fandom.
Yeah, that parent owned in 1983, 84, when Shout the Devil comes out and the guy goes, I used to have this, now my kid's buying it. And and it's fun. And that's what I really enjoy about the record store. And
you bring up a wonderful point, which is inherited fandom, which many of us have for certain things, popular culture that our parents like very much.
Back 2 seconds, I gotta let my dog out.
Sure. For me, part of it was inheriting a real enjoyment of the big bands, in part because my folks love them, and part of their fun was testing me on like who the lead singer for the Dorsey band was in 1941, that kind of thing, which is just great fun. And I'm thinking if Eric was still here, we could talk about it together. I knew the Blue Oyster Cult from before they were the Blue Oyster Cult, and watched them grow as friends into an important, successful band. And for a period of time, I was their official photographer. I'm sorry I didn't think to put any pictures up here. I'd be the first one out on stage once it got pitch dark. I'd find a spot, got my Nikon camera, I'm working with available light, and the announcer would say, ladies and gentlemen, the Blue Oyster Cult. And the applause would come up, flash pots would go off, they'd go into their first song. I thought I was particularly clever this time because I thought I found something where I could kind of brace myself against and sort of sit on, pretty much pitch dark. And I wasn't thinking this through. And after that last Blue Oyster Cult, the flash pots, which ring the stage, went off. And I was sort of sitting on one. And it blew me into a stack of Marshall amplifiers, and I became unconscious because of the physics of my head hitting the amp. The guys were concerned, but they were starting the middle of their first song. I was in a position where if the roadies tried to get me, it would be very, people would notice it. Everybody just hoped I wasn't dead, and the song went on. I think toward the end of the song, I came to, and the first thing I was aware of was that something smelled wrong. It turned out it was half of my hair, which had been singed off. And you know what it's like chicken feathers smells like when you light them? Anyway, it was not a good night for me. I got some great photographs. I had a rock and roll experience. And I was so stubborn I waited 3 days to get a haircut. I mean, that's just stupid. But I think just good times and rock and roll. I'm sure we all have, stories to that effect. I have to share this one. My sister, who went on to become a rock and roller, when I was already at college and she was a senior in high school, we had a club out on Long Island called the Action House. And she went there with some friends Friday or Saturday night. Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels were playing. I mean, does it get any better than that? And during the performance of Good Golly, Miss Molly, Devil with the Blue Dress, Helen, who's like 4'11", at the apron of the stage, she sees him very close up as his eyes kind of roll up into his head, and he just goes down. And one of the maracas breaks and beads shoots all over the place. And as Helen told me when I came home from vacation, said, that's when I realized what I wanted to do with my life. Rock and roll, you can't beat it.
Addressing the warning label thing, that was started by the PMRC, which was Tipper Gore, Al Gore's wife.
Interesting. Oh my gosh, I forgot about Tipper's morality.
Right. Well, that's because he made her shut up about it when he was running as vice president. He told her to, back out of it, leave it alone, because obviously some of those people that were getting upset with Tipper Gore were voters. And all they got was a voluntary agreement from record labels to put warning labels on. Were appropriate or inappropriate, I guess is the more thing. But yeah, I mean, those labels also drew kids to buy it.
Of course.
Yeah, a great advertising ploy. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, there's a Flotsam and Jetsam song that says literally that kid sees a label on a record, so then he buys it. It's like, yeah, that's what you achieved. You sold more records for bands that were more,
sure.
Out there. But it never. I mean, the only impact stuff like that ever had is like when Walmart would decide they didn't like a cover, something, and they'd have to make a different cover so it would be sold at Walmart.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much nonsense when it comes to like the mainstream view of this stuff. Like I remember Marilyn Manson being kicked off some big festival in certain areas, while Cradle of Filth, who were 1,000 times worse, were able to play. And it's just like, you people are clueless. And metal, usually kids rebel. They rebel against their parents.
Yeah.
And doing this, I've seen so many young bands come in who are like, man, I wish I grew up when my parents did. And they love the same music. The parents are either, some of them are in bands with their parents. They're in their 20s, their parents are in their 50s or whatever, and they're in a band together.
It's amazing.
And they all like Ozzy.
It really is so interesting. Again, inherited fandom it's a double compliment to, of course, the artist. But I'll go off on another tangent here. The finest stage actress I ever saw work was Geraldine Page. Not a name that immediately comes up for a lot of film lovers. Jerry made, I think, 44 films in her career, but appeared in over 500 stage productions. That was her love. And she basically did a film a year to pay the bills, and then went back to Broadway, off-Broadway, or regional theater. I managed the theater for 9 of her last 11 plays and got to see her perform in parts of plays because I had work to do hundreds of times. And she was as good as they get. And one matinee evening, I remember after the crowd was leaving, there was a young woman sitting in a bench that we had in our lobby. I'm guessing she was no more than 20, very unassuming. And at a certain point, the theater was empty. The lobby was empty except for her. And the only actor left was Geraldine Page. She always took her time. And I walked up to the young woman, introduced myself as a theater manager. She immediately got defensive, feeling she's going to get thrown out or something. And I just asked her why she was, sticking around because the play was over. And she said, Geraldine Page is my favorite actress. And I inherited my love for her from my mom. And I realized she looked a little familiar, and it was because she had seen the matinee show as well as just having watched the evening show. And she said, I won't bother her. I just want to watch her walk by. And I said, oh, of course, no problem. Well, I couldn't not go backstage, knock on Geraldine's door and say, I've got to tell you something. Oh, the other thing was she had a 9x12 manila envelope in her lap. And I asked her what it was. And she said, it's the most valuable thing I own. It was a gift from my mother. And she carefully takes it out, and it's a playbill from one of Tennessee Williams' early plays called Summer and Smoke. Mm-hmm. And on the cast listing, Geraldine is listed second, but the male lead was unable to perform that night. And there, her mother crossed the name out. Don, you may remember when ballpoint pens started to come out when we were kids, there was just a very blue ballpoint. Maybe you guys know, it's just, I would call it blue ballpoint ink. It's bright blue. And it was crossed out in a way that you realize it probably wasn't much lighting. And written in small print was James Dean. He was the understudy for the lead. And he got his big break that night that her mother saw the play. Well, I go back and I tell Geraldine this story. And as soon as I mention this, her eyes get shining. I remember that night. I loved Jimmy and he loved me. You bring that girl in here right now. I went out into the lobby, said, I have to apologize to you. I couldn't not tell Geraldine about your mom and the program, and she'd like to meet you. Well, she looks at me and she bursts into tears. I mean, she just starts sobbing. And, oh, no, I couldn't. Or meanwhile, I'm walking her in. I get to the door, and it's like a cartoon. Hold it 1 second while I bring Don back in. It's like, the door opens. I see an arm come out, grab this girl. Whew, she's in. The door closes. I go back in the lobby. 20 minutes pass. Out they finally come. The girl is in the happiest shock anybody has ever been. She's just looking straight ahead. She doesn't see me. Jerry gives me a smile and nod, and they leave. And the next afternoon, getting ready for the performance, I asked her what went on. She said, well, I immediately had to, give her a big hug and a kiss. And we talked about her mom, and we talked about the play. And I signed her playbill, and I signed a glossy for her. And I took her home in a cab, and it was a great evening. That's fandom in the best possible way. And I'd like to think that years from now, people will come up to Jack or his sisters or his mom and say, I really loved your dad. He really was a wonderful performer and he made a difference in my life.
I would think so. I mean, especially because they were on the TV show and stuff, so people know who they are. So I would think, yeah, that's something you're gonna see. He's gonna see happen probably for the rest of his life.
It's so interesting. Have any of you? I mean, music evolves like other art forms. Now, the genres of punk and heavy metal are established areas of accepted music. People get their PhDs writing, their doctorates on some aspect of it. There is a punk music museum now in Las Vegas. Where else? And several years ago, the prestigious Museum of Modern Art had an exhibit from their costume collection of rock and roll, outfits. Of course, there's a museum, in Cleveland. I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but,
Yes.
Seeing Jim Morrison's Cub Scout shirt is an experience. It's, things that we can relate to in a world that was ours, remains ours. Roger?
Yes.
Any thoughts on, for you, Ozzy's heritage, where it goes from here? Also, for Matt, Soraya, Roger, do you see any next form that will emerge out of heavy metal? And you referred to black metal at one point earlier today. How did you mean that, allegorically or racially?
No, it's black metal initially were bands like Venom and Merciful Fate who had satanic lyrics. But by the early 90s, it had evolved into its own style, which is usually like hyper fast classical music with lots of screaming and oftentimes lo-fi sort of recording, because a lot of the original black metal bands were coming from like Norway and stuff like that, Mayhem and stuff, and they didn't have the money to get good recordings. So they had this very dissident sort of sound. And usually where they were satanic, but now black metal doesn't mean a band is singing about satanic themes. There are literally new genres of metal showing up every day. And particularly those that are associated with black metal. There's atmospheric black metal and this type of black metal and that type of black metal. And it's just, and there's post metal. The genres are unreal, because it's almost like every band's in their own genre at this point. And it just keeps splintering out and out. And because of this, these streaming services and stuff have come out and said that heavy metal is actually the most popular form of music on a lot of these services.
Gosh.
Putting out pop music. But you got to consider that heavy metal starts with, Alice Cooper, Black Sabbath, people like that, and goes up to modern day. So you have a good 55, 60-year span of music that just keeps diversifying. You can play two metal bands next to one another. You wouldn't even expect them to be the same genre of music, but they're both metal. I mean, if you listen to Nightwish and, like I mentioned, Obituary earlier, you would think this is not the same style of music, but they're both metal bands. One's a death metal band, one's a symphonic metal band.
You've just kind of cracked a code for me, Soraya, which is, that's the way I think about jazz. And I mean, there are so many different kinds of jazz. It's like looking at a gallery show by a painter, and it looks like 15 painters did the paintings. And there are artists that really have mastered that many styles and choose to work in all of them at the same time, although it's not that common. But I never thought of it quite like that. And jazz, of course, is the ultimate evolving American musical original expression.
Yeah.
Done.
Well, where you just mentioned as far as who did you just mention as far as one of the earlier metal?
Mayhem, Venom, Merciful Fate.
Are you referring to Alice Cooper?
Alice Cooper.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Actually, Roger's
How
uncle
daring Alice
played
back in the
drums.
day.
Alice, who had his own demons, so to speak, and that he pretty much following as far as the same course as Ozzy, as far as with his alcoholism.
Yep.
And that presently he's a very devout Christian. Yep. In that sense. And I'm only going to, repeat what a reporter was speaking to some minister who had approached Ozzy and Jack, and even Sharon and Kelly were there in the background, but they were just there doing a convention. Mm-hmm. They were just doing a signing as far as autographs. And he presented Ozzy with a Bible. It was a personalized Bible. And Ozzy, according to the minister, made the comment that he says, the reason I never read the Bible was because I couldn't understand it. Now, if I can read this, and it was a contemporary version. So Ozzy started paging through it, and he said, and all at once he goes, I can understand this. So the minister went on to describe that Jack would tell him afterwards in a subsequent phone call that they were going up the elevator to their rooms, and all at once Ozzy said, "Where's my Bible?" And Jack said, "Well, we left it under the table. We'll be back tomorrow. We'll pick it up then."
Sure.
And Ozzy said, "I want my Bible. I want to read it tonight."
Wow.
And that this minister then would receive a phone call directly from Ozzy some weeks later. And that Ozzy asked him, "Do you think I'm going to heaven?"
Oh, my.
Now, if it's a true story or not, but easily checked out with Jack. But the idea that as we all, get on in years, these are all questions we start, as we face our own mortality. And I think Alice Cooper is a wonderful example of where you put aside that what you're mainly known for, and it becomes strictly your shtick. It's your act, nothing more.
Right. That's
it
right.
has nothing to do with your true persona. Yeah.
Well, and Alice, again, like Ozzy, never wrote anything really satanic.
Right.
He wrote stuff like "I Love the Dead" and stuff, but that was pure theatrics.
Yeah.
And you'd see a stage show, and it was pure theatrics. This was like going to watch a horror movie, except it was music.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and then he started his own haunted houses, didn't he? I think he has a fundraising haunted house in Phoenix, and now he's got a chain of them. So all theater.
And he just evolved with whatever. He went from doing sort of like a hard rock thing with the first few to doing almost disco in the late 70s and early 80s. And when metal started coming back, he went to more of a heavy metal sort of thing. And then in the late 90s did some really heavy stuff, which was almost shocking. And more recently went back to his earlier style. So he just, to him, this was a business.
What a career.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still out there every night performing.
Yes. And I think we all know that if Ozzy, health permitting, that he would have followed. He never would have retired. He would have continued on as long as possible.
Writing music.
Mm-hmm.
I think guys like that, or Dio, who literally performed till he couldn't anymore when he had cancer. Lemmy from Motorhead just kept going.
Yeah.
He had no intention of quitting until he died.
Well, Tony Bennett certainly. Yeah.
It's if you're lucky enough, if you're fortunate enough to have found your work, and let's face it, so many people in the world hate what they do for a living. Some of them, they're not in love with it, but it pays the bills, and others, probably more people than not, do not like what they do to have to pay the bills and make a living. I'm thinking, Don, about Zachariah Sitchin,
Mhm.
who was still working when he passed at 90. The late great Stanton Friedman,
Absolutely.
82.
The last thing he was doing, the
He was
idea
at the airport. Yep.
at the airport, yeah.
I mean, if we're lucky enough to be doing what we're passionate about,
When you love
why
what
stop?
you're doing, it's no longer work.
Yes.
Yeah. Good character actors can do that too. It's Katharine Hepburn was working into her 80s, and as long as you, Spencer Tracy, you say, remember your lines and don't walk into the furniture. This is what you need to act. But I think it's one of the things, again, that inspires a lot of us who grew up with certain bands and certain types of music. Like Eric said, Mick Jagger is an exception to the rule. From what I've read about him and learned about him, he takes very good care of himself. He exercises.
Yes.
He lives a very good life. He has 8 children that he adores, and all of them are taken care of. Everything good with past relationships, and still, what a showman! Oh my God, the meme that I had not put in here that I thought would just be fun to show. It shows Keith Richards sitting with like 4 little kids, and he's maybe in his 20s still, but the caption was Keith Richards waiting for the other Rolling Stones to grow up so they can start the band. Talk about somebody who has not taken very good care of themselves, or maybe has now and has the pose of just rock and roll and party till you drop. It's
I guess what we could ask, because so often as one passes on and their legacy is where their families, their children, their exes, their former band members do a tell-all. They come forward after you're no longer there to defend yourself. And would we predict, do we foresee that anyone within the Osbourne family is going to, reveal any deep, dark secrets, of the late Ozzy? And I don't see that at all. I see that, he was loved by his family. And I think that's the true mark of the individual, that after they're gone, no one has a bad thing left to say about them.
Yeah, good point. And in a case like Ozzy, where I've made all of my screw-ups public, anybody want to outdo me on this?
It's all out there. It's all out there. Right.
No scandals will emerge.
Yeah.
That's
The scandal will be a bright idea that came out of it. Stuff that was, hey, I didn't know that he was this generous, or you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Everybody would look at him as, all the flaws, but the things that get overlooked are the good that he did because of his persona.
Yeah.
That, how is that going to ruin your relationship? It's not, and your reputation. And so I think we're going to find out some gems about him, that things
Agreed, man.
that he did that nobody knew he did.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think that's a great thought to hold in our hearts. Again, this concert, for me, if you're signing off and your health is quickly diminishing, and you have an opportunity to lend your good name and yourself to a good cause and leave this planet having made a pile of money for something important or good, I don't think dying gets any better on a certain level than being able to do it, leaving a gift. Here's another statement that I just thought was great. If you don't believe in yourself, no one else will. You've got to be your own biggest fan, even when you're your own worst enemy.
And you can say that.
That's profound.
Yeah. Oh, I have an interesting Ozzy fact that may not be known to everybody else. Now, you know, my background is in genetic engineering in some places, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ozzy was tested and found to have the highest concentration of Cro-Magnon that we found.
Oh,
What?
Yeah.
interesting.
Ozzy's mainly caveman.
Mm-hmm.
What do you deduce from that as a scientist?
Well, I find it interesting because, you know, it showed his robustness because Cro-Magnon was a very serious, wasn't really so much precursor, but they were able to interbreed, you know, during the ice ages and stuff like that. So the idea that he brought into himself, his family lineage, a robustness. Now, could that be why he lived so long? Is because his, you know, to use the good genes thing, you know, that's currently going around now. But, you know, is this the opposite? You know, the good genes work out for this?
Matt, I have to ask you, is it common for Cro-Magnon DNA to show up in modern, you know?
We all have a small portion of it.
Sure.
But from the study I saw, it showed that he had far more than most people.
Fascinating.
Just saying. And I'll shut up now.
No, don't do that, please.
I think, you know, when you talk about Ozzy, you know, bad things coming out about him, Ozzy shared so many messed up stories about his own life and stupid things he did that I don't think there are any skeletons to really come out. I mean,
Neanderthal. Sorry, Neanderthal.
Neanderthal, yeah. There was, you know, there's the story of him snorting ants.
Jesus.
I was watching a hair metal like documentary thing, and they were talking about touring with Ozzy and how wild he was and how much fun he was. This was before he died, and I don't remember who it was. Maybe one of the guys from Motley Crue or something. And they said they're in a hotel. It's this posh hotel, and they're going around causing mischief. And, it's a hotel where people would leave their shoes outside the door to be shined.
Huh.
And Ozzy saw the shoes, and he's like, "Watch this!" And he ran in the guy's shoes. And then ran away.
How wonderfully adolescent.
Exactly. But I mean, like that's the stuff we know about. I mean, I don't think we're going to get horrible stories. Like, I'm sure the guy whose shoes he pooped in thought it was a horrible story.
No doubt.
Very childish, but also he was probably very high and drunk at the time.
Well, there you go. That explains it. And he's forgiven.
Exactly. I mean, if these are the worst things that come out about Ozzy, I mean, I don't foresee anything else that's going to like ruin his empire, his iconic stature.
Huh. Oh gosh. You know, as we come into our last few minutes, I can only say I hope that the world keeps giving us colorful, independent, original, courageous in terms of making goofy artistic decisions that people will enjoy, that people will have a good time with. In that sense, Ozzy Osbourne's a great role model. And I can only imagine what he's doing now.
I only hope that AI doesn't rob us of our uniqueness, our originality.
Ooh, good point. It's
and
getting scary.
The idea, I often cite like the Three Stooges. Who else could be the Three Stooges? Who else could be Elvis Presley? Yeah. Who else could be Ozzy? I mean, who's the future Ozzy? No. They're unique. 1 in a billion. And luckily we had them in our generation. That's the wonderful thing.
And how different would the music scene today be without Sabbath and Ozzy?
Yeah.
Well, exactly. I want to thank you all for this rather unusual episode of Meanwhile Here on Earth. Soraya Asketh, Don Schmidt, Matt Moniz, Roger Chobernard, and of course, Eric Bloom, lead singer for the Blue Oyster Cult. Gentlemen, a pleasure spending this time with you. stand up for what you believe in, stay healthy, and I'll see you guys around the campus.
Thank
Good
you.
night, all.